Okay, guys, let me fix my camera. Review video for the chapter 13-14 test. Now, please remember, okay, you need to see material at least 3 times in order for it to resonate. If you're just listening to it, that's not enough. You need to listen to it, you need to write it down, you need to discuss it, you need to be able to teach it to others, and that's when you can get the full scope of what is going on in chapter 13 and chapter 14. So please remember you have the chapter 14 key terms. I'm not putting all the key people on the test, but you're definitely going to see Polk on there. You're going to see Zachary Taylor on there. You're going to see Lewis Cass on there, and you're going to see John Brown on there. So that's the 4. Okay, Polk, Taylor, Cass, and Brown. I think that's what I just said. Yes, they're going to be on there. The rest I'm not putting on there. The rest might be there in different ways, like on the test, but I'll go through those. Okay. So I'm going to start in chapter 13. As always, I have my test pulled up on my second screen right here. So I'm literally going through what you need to find and how you need to study. You have a question on manifest destiny. It's the first question. It's really key termy. It's a key term type question. So if you know the key term, which you will have, you're not going to have chapter 13 key terms. Anyway, it's a key term question. If you know the definition, you should do fine. Question number 2, you've got to know like different guys or different people in order to get this right. So make sure you know who Polk was, Henry Clay, and John Tyler. Okay, make sure you know who those 3 people are and like what they did. It'll also help you with the people in your chapter 14. Okay, key terms. You have a question about the Oregon Territory before President Polk. Okay. And then you have a question about the Oregon Territory after President Polk. Like, what does he see? Like, what's the potential he sees in the Oregon Territory? So make sure you know what's going on before and after. Dates are important. So the early 1840s versus like 44, like from way back to like the early 40s, Oregon is something, and then Polk is using it for something else. So 2 questions on it. Make sure you know. I want to know the connection between Texas and the Mexican-American War. I want to know what the Wilmot Proviso was, even though it didn't pass. This is a real key termy question, Wilmot Proviso. I want to know what happened in the Treaty of Guadalupe of Hidalgo. What did it end? What was in it? I want to know everything in the Compromise of 1850. Everything. Not 1 or 2 things, or maybe the most controversial thing is definitely on the test, but every aspect in it. Because if you don't know every aspect, you're not going to get this question right. And I don't know how to make it any easier for y'all. So make sure you know everything about the Compromise of 1850 going into the Compromise of 1850. It's not a hard question, but it is so incredibly important. Okay. I want to know what squatter sovereignty / popular sovereignty was trying to do. Like, it's a technique. It sounds really good. I want to know what role does that play in the sectional crisis. Stephen Douglas, who's he and what does he want to do? He's on the test. Who's he? What's he? What do you want to do? You have a question on the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So the Kansas-Nebraska Act did a lot of things. Make sure you know all the things that it did. Ooh, and then you have another question about Kansas, but it's more like Bleeding Kansas. And the guy associated with Bleeding Kansas, he's in the question too. So that'll help you if you know if that is Bleeding Kansas, not Harper's Ferry, Bleeding Kansas. You have a Dred Scott question. And the Dred Scott question isn't like as easy as it sounds. It's more focusing the decision made by Taney and President Buchanan. So I know it's in the PowerPoint. So go to the Dred Scott slide. Make sure you do know the story because it'll help you with like writing quizzes and stuff like that. But something's going on with Buchanan with Dred Scott. Make sure you know that. What was Buchanan's job once he became president? He had one goal he had to do. That's on the test. Lincoln is put on the map in 58. What is he doing in 58? Remember the bam, bam, bam sheet that I gave you guys during a lecture and we dated all of these things? All of my questions have dates on them because we're really working in short periods of time. So I definitely want you to make sure that you know dates. Something's going on with Lincoln and Stephen in 1858. And I want to know what it is, and I want to know how impactful it is. Okay, from 1860 to 1861, who's seceding? Like, what's that all about? You have a question on that? I want to know specifically Virginia's story about secession. Lincoln had a special session of Congress and said that this war would do something. He also said that he didn't want in his inaugural address, he didn't make sure you know what's in his inaugural address. That'll be better. He actually had a different message versus what happens after emancipation. Okay, so now I've been in chapter 14, by the way. I hope you guys know that. What was like the Confederacy strategy? There was a strategy, and it was one of their advantages when it came to actually fighting the war. The Battle of Antietam. Well, you got to know like everything. You got to know everything. I like listed a bunch of things. You have to know everything. This is one of the, yeah, this is one of the big ones. You got to know it. Every aspect of the Battle of Antietam, just like the Compromise of 1850. I want to know what Lincoln does after the draft. You have a key termy question about the Second Confiscation Act. It's just basically like, what is it? So make sure you know the Second Confiscation Act. Emancipation Proclamation. Remember, it happens after the Battle of Antietam. The preliminary one does. And like, what does it actually say? Like, make sure you know what it actually says, and you'll get this question right. And I made sure to like put something in red to not confuse you, because in the question that might confuse you. So go back to the PowerPoint, make sure you know like what it actually said. That's how you're being tested on it. I want to know the turning point battles, like the big battles. So make sure you understand Antietam, Vicksburg, and Gettysburg. I want to know another consequence of the Emancipation Proclamation. Remember, it's after the Battle of Antietam, and there's some things that are happening because of it. Lincoln is changing a little bit, and there's other people that are being affected because of the Emancipation Proclamation. Make sure you know that. I want to know how Lincoln did in the 64 election. You have a question on the election. I want to know what the 13th Amendment is all about. We're going to talk about that definitely more so tomorrow in my lecture, but you guys should know what the 13th Amendment did. I want to know what the South looked like after the war. And then you guys have some stimulus questions. You have the picture of the 107th Infantry from 1864 to 1865. That's on there. You can also find it in your book. So I would read that caption, and I showed it to you in my PowerPoint today. Okay. You have two documents that you have to read. We're actually going to cover these on Thursday, but if you want to go in your book, I believe they're on pages 274 and 273. I might be wrong. One is Lieutenant Colonel Samuel J. Nasmith in the 25th Wisconsin Infantry. So if you type that up, you can find it in your book. The other one is a letter from an unknown woman. And it says, my dear, well, what is the sourcing on it? Unknown woman letter to her daughter, Columbia, South Carolina, March 3rd, 1865. We're going to actually go over both of these in class to help prepare you for this, because they're not hard to read, but they're definitely like the reality of the atrocities of the end of the war, the scorched earth campaign, Union strategy versus Confederate strategy, which we totally understand the Union strategy far exceeded that of the Confederate strategy, but really like what war looks like, even on the winning side and on the losing side. It's not all what it's cracked up to be just because you're victorious. Okay. And then the last stimulus you have is John Gash's Manifest Destiny painting, where we had Lady Liberty, right? Remember, she's moving in to the West, and we looked at that as a class. We have the trains, you have the American Indian that's like looking back, right? Everybody's in a forward motion. You've got prospectors, cattle. So you have a couple of questions of looking at that. So I would definitely make sure that you know what that painting is. It's the first painting you see at the beginning of chapter 13. Just how the Western region is just transforming is big. It's really big. And this is a huge direction of the painting. What else could I give you? If you really understand like the definition of manifest destiny for the second question, I think you'll be set. Okay. All right. That's the test. So we've got 35 questions, and then you've got like 30 key terms. I might take some out just so it's not so cumbersome. So special message, if anybody qualifies for extended time and you would like to come in Friday morning to do the vocabulary portion, I strongly recommend you do that because I don't want you to feel any stress or any anxiety walking into the test with vocab terms and the multiple choice, because sometimes that can be a little cumbersome. So please, if you want to relieve some stress and you qualify for extended time, just show up Friday morning about 8:45, 8:30, 8:45. Make sure you're prepared and let's knock out the vocab. And then I can hold on to that and give you the rest of the test. Okay. Make sure you're going through answers by yourself. You're finding them. Okay. Then you're talking to your study buddy and you're discussing it. That is a part of like the retaining, like your study buddy, you're committed, you're doing a good job, you're working with each other. Then you want to put yourself in a testing scenario. You want to make sure that you're not seeing the answers to your questions. Tomorrow in class, we'll finish early. The more you are prepared, the better. I'll be here to answer questions. Watch this video, watch as many times as you can. Prepare early so I can help on Thursday. Then we test Friday, and next Monday and Tuesday is essay boot camp. So I know y'all are going to be successful as long as you just study, review, and listen to Kroll.